What's up, everybody? So, welcome back to the Grand Mail Podcast. This is episode number 25, sharing your story with the Tyler Wagner. How are you doing this morning, my friend? From morning in Los Angeles, and how's it in Miami over there in the afternoon?
It's going well. It's hot as you would expect, but it's going well. And
I
thanks for
bet.
having me on. Grateful to be here.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. So, just a little explanation of how I met Tyler. So, Tyler, I don't know exactly like how we met. I don't remember 100%. I think it had to do either
Yeah.
through LinkedIn, either you reached out to me or something happened where either it was Facebook or LinkedIn, and then you were on this path of creating Authors Unite. I think this is probably about 7 years ago or 6 years ago, maybe.
Wow. Yeah. It could have been. I started like 10 years ago, but the branding for Authors Unite was like 7 years ago. So that makes sense.
hmm And one of the things, so when I found out that you're also part of Delta Sigma Pi, I was like, all right, cool, we got another fellow Delta Sig. What chapter are you part of?
So in Columbia, in South Carolina.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. And what was your reason for joining the fraternity, by the way, before we jump into your personal story and everything else? I'm just curious because for any other future Delta Sigs that are watching this.
Yeah. So first off, I'll say I definitely recommend it. I'm trying to think back. I think the main reason that I joined is because I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do like professionally. So I was like, okay, well, this is a business professional fraternity. And oh yeah, and now it's coming back to me. I remember too, kind of one of the selling points to join. A lot of people in the chapter were parts of like really big companies like Google, Facebook, and stuff like that.
hmm
So I was like, okay, well, my mind just thinks of relationships. So I was just like, if I end up wanting to work for one of these companies, if I join this fraternity, I will be able to become friends with people that are already like working for them. So it doesn't get much easier than that, than a direct referral to get into one of those companies. So I think that was the main reason.
Awesome. So Tyler, can you explain a little bit about yourself, like who you are? So a little bit about your past, what's going on in the present, and also what's going on in the future. You see, I threw that DSP right there in there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's some fun secretive stuff. We can't do it on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so I think best place to start is probably around 19, 20 years old. So I had joined, Delta Sig, and I was enjoying it, but it wasn't just because of them, but I had read a book called The 4 Hour Work Week. And the
hmm
whole college experience for me, I had been there for 2 years. It was great, but it just came to me. I was like, I don't think I want to work for someone. Like it was just like in the back of my mind, and I kept shutting it off. And then once I read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, I literally called my guidance counselor or like had them set up a meeting. And I was like, okay, either there's got to be a major in entrepreneurship that makes sense, or I believe I'm going to be dropping out of college. And I ended up dropping out. And then what happened is I wrote a book called Conference Crushing. It's about how to network at events.
Yep.
Because after I dropped out, my two ways of learning, because I wasn't in school anymore, was reading books, and then also essentially going to conferences for free. Because what I would do is email conference coordinators and say, hey, I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, but I'm broke because I'm 20 and I'm a college dropout and I have $80,000 in debt. And surprisingly enough, out of all the reach outs I did, I got a lot of yeses. So I was able to be behind the scenes at a lot of big events. Oddly enough, like 6 months later, one of the events that said yes was called Mastermind Talks. And one of the keynote speakers was Tim Ferriss. So I was
Nice.
literally, I met him like 6 months after reading his book, and I was not gonna lie, totally fanboy, like to the extreme. Like I was nervous. And then either way, to kind of speed up to get to this point,
hmm
I didn't write the book to help others with their books. I had written the book because I thought I wanted to be a public speaker. And what happened though, way quicker than that taking off, is a bunch of people just started asking me, how did I write it, publish it, and market it? 10 years later, we've done over 2,000 book launches and Authors Unite, as you know. So that's where we're at presently.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Tim, yeah, so I actually read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and I'll be honest with you, I guess I didn't really like the book, and I guess I didn't like the book because I felt like it was unrealistic, and I felt like, how is that possible to live a 4 hour work week? Like, how can you I guess it's because of my conditioning and how I've been programmed to like live where you got to like, I don't want to I don't want to discredit anybody who works, really, really hard till like they're 65 years old or anything like that. But
Yeah.
that's not the kind of life I want to live. And I think the 4 hour work week, I don't even know if I actually if I would only want to work 4 hours in a week, but I
No,
get what he's coming from. That's not the point. The point is not just to like, it's just to kind of live on your own terms pretty much. Right.
totally. And it was like how to outsource. I mean, there's a lot of different parts in the book, but
Hmm.
from what I remember, and it's been like 10, 11 years since I've read it now, but the two main things that it did for me, one was there was this kind of like practice in the book, and it was discovering like what's the worst that could happen. Right. So a lot of times we fear in our mind is like way bigger than the reality. So for me, dropping out of school was this huge fear. But then when I dialed it down and read that book, I just was like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, I end up coming back a year later. Like, I live with my parents, which happen to have a pretty nice house, like some Billy Madison stuff. I was like, that ain't bad. I was like, I think I'll make it.
Yeah.
So it was that. And then the 4 hour work week, I think, is more of a titling thing to like kind of grab attention.
Hmm.
Although with the correct outsourcing, it's definitely doable. But like you said, I've actually kind of done that. And I will tell you, I like to work more than that because if not, with that much time on your hands, there's a lot of things you can do, is what I'll say. Not like too many things, is what I'll say. So,
Abs-
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I remember you reached out to me. I think it was either to contribute to Conference Crushing or it was to contribute to the first
Oh,
book that you were.
the Better Business book, probably.
Better Business. Yeah, yeah, that's what it was. And I'll be honest with you. When you
Yeah.
first reach out to me, I was very honored. And I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. I can contribute to a book.
Yeah.
If you would have met me now and you asked me to contribute to your book, different story. But back then I was like younger. I didn't have, you know what it was? One of the insecurities that I had, Tyler, was that, well, I got to go full screen for this for a second. So one of the things that for me, Tyler, I had was this insecurity that I couldn't provide to the world. I couldn't provide enough information to the world. So I wanted to find out what was my message. Right. And I think for anybody who's aspiring to get to the point where like Tyler and I are, because now I have my message. Now I know exactly what I do is I help men with mindset and dating advice. And I also like to talk to people like Tyler who are successful businessmen. And because my brand, The Grand Male, is about promoting a man to become better through his health, through his fitness, through business, through everything, just becoming a better version of yourself like every day. So when again, like I was honestly a little bit I felt like inadequate to provide any information to Tyler, but the fact that you even reached out to me and you reached out to other guys, like this is why I like you a lot, Tyler, because you reached out to guys and men and women that were trying to get their voice heard, that were ready to provide the information provided to the world, right? So the thing is, like I like to do that too. I have live streams where I have guys who are not big name guys and blue checkmark guys. They come on my panel and we talk about issues, right? I want their voice to be heard. And that's another thing that I researched on Authors Unite, was that Authors Unite is like getting people who don't want to deal with the whole marketing of their book, because you could have literally the best story in the world, but if it doesn't get to the right person, then your voice will not be heard, right? And it can kind of crush you a little bit. You're like, well, am I, is my story not good enough? Is my message not strong enough? But sometimes it just has to do with the marketing of the book. Is that right?
100%, man. And we're very similar in that way then, because that's what I had realized early on is like 99% of publishers, and I'm not saying anything bad about them, it's just not what they do. But 99% of book publishers don't do marketing. So I can't tell you like how many people early on and still to this day, that's why our business does well, is people come to me and they're like, hey, I spent 2 years writing this book. We launched it and I've gotten like 100 sales, like complete flop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what we've mastered is book marketing. So obviously I can't predict how the market is going to like receive the book. So it's not like I can guarantee success in the long term, but I can give, what I tell people is I can give your book a chance. Like I can help your book get in front of millions of people, sell thousands, tens of thousands of copies, and hit these bestseller lists. And then you can leverage those for like PR opportunities, like doing a podcast. And then the more you get out there and the more people read the book, it ultimately becomes the market's decision at that point, because how books are purchased, in my opinion, is by people telling others about it. Like the reason I read the 4 Hour Work Week is because there were some friends at my college that were like, dude, this book completely changed my life. You got to read it. And then I just bought it and read it. Otherwise, I would have never just like randomly like went on Google and typed in like 4 Hour Work Week, like
Right.
I would have never have found that. So yeah, ultimately that is what it is. And I'm here to help people that are already there and like want to get to the next level, or like they're just starting out, like you're saying, and they really want to just get that voice out there to begin with.
Absolutely, we got my friend Alex in the chat. Thank you, Alex. Good to see you. Good afternoon in the East Coast. Good morning in Los Angeles. So good to see you, Alex. Alex, this is actually a very good conversation. I'm happy you're in here because if you're ever, because Alex and I, so he goes by Huds as well. Huds is his business name. So Huds, myself, and another guy named Chris, we were in a position of trying to write a book. So Chris is the fitness guy. I'm more of like the inner game, the inner mindset, like how to become like mindset transformation, to make it
Yeah.
short. And then Alex he's more of like the dating advice guy. So we wanted to create kind of like a trifecta thing where it's like you get mindset, you get dating, and you get fitness all combined in one book. And like each person has their own expertise of offering advice. So we kind of had a little bit of like well, I'll just say this, like I haven't really contributed anything to the book. I know the fitness guy did. I don't know if Huds has at all, but I want to ask you this question because okay, so I'm going to explain how when I'm in the process of writing a book, what happens, and maybe you can explain why this happens because I'm trying to make sure I'm on the right page about this. So I literally there's that one book example I gave you, Tyler. There's another book example that I gave you where myself, I have like a little page. I have about a little bit of, I guess, an autobiography, but it's not really an autobiography about myself. It is, but it's mostly to help guys and say, hey, listen, this is what I wish you guys knew by the age of 30. Right. And I provide everything about like just dealing with being in high school, dealing with college, dealing with just everything about like dating advice, life advice. But when I got to the halfway point, which is where I actually had to provide solutions and get into in-depth details, that's when I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm not into it anymore. And all of a sudden I just started losing um, I guess, attraction for the book. And my book is on hold right now. It's on pause. And I have not actually pursued even continuing it. So my book writing is now being replaced with with the live streaming stuff. So my
Mhm.
question to you, Tyler, is the reason why I stopped publishing this book, I guess a reason, because I just don't want it that bad.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's hard, man. So I'll be completely honest. Like when I
Please.
was 19, 20 years old and I wrote my first book, I happened to be prescribed Adderall. So I'll just so that made it, and it seems like we're similar. I'll bring this full circle. And so it's one of the most difficult things for me ever to like sit in a room and do anything like very focused and by myself. Whereas I've literally, like on my podcast, I've done almost 2,000 episodes, right? And to me, that's easy. Like I used to do short ones. I could do like 20, 15-minute interviews in a day, or like 6 1-hour interviews back to back, and absolutely love it. So easy, doesn't feel like work to me. So maybe we're similar in that way. Like maybe you're more of an extrovert than introvert. That could be it. And it's also just an option for you to kind of try to solve your problem. There are ghostwriters. They're not cheap, but if you're like hitting like points, like you're saying, like you're able to tell the story, but when it comes to like the bullet points for the reader, you could have like a book coach or a ghostwriter help you through that process. And for my first book, even with the amounts of Adderall I was taking, um, I still had an amazing editor. And I say this all the time on shows. My first book, I believe, was like a 2 out of 10. And then my editor took it to like a 9 out of 10. And then us together at the end, a little back and forth, got it to that feeling of a 10 out of 10. So it is dramatic how much an editor, ghostwriter, or like somebody helping you can really have on the project. So maybe you need some outside help, maybe. Um, or like you said, or maybe it's just not a big priority for you at this time. That's possible as well.
Okay. So let's talk about Authors Unite, which is your company. So Authors Unite, it helps. Is it a book marketing company, or does it also help with editing? Does it help with, like, if I literally just completed that book that I was telling you about,
Yeah.
what would be when would I contact Authors Unite? Would it be like, okay, Tyler, my book is ready. Before I put it on Amazon, before I put it on other, let's say there's like other, like, I think there's Authors Direct or something like that too. There's all multiple platforms I can publish my book on, or post my book on.
Single
What would
direct.
be the next step?
So we can help you from start to finish completely. So we have ghostwriters, editors, we do publishing and marketing, and then even beyond hitting the bestseller list, like PR, and then helping authors like grow their business, because a lot of our authors are nonfiction. It's just what we're known for is the marketing, and that's just because really two reasons. One, most people just don't do it, and then like I don't have many competitors on that front. There are a lot of publishers out there. There's just not a lot of book marketers, and then I guess the ones that claim to be good, like the results vary, and our results are like very consistent. But yeah, so if you, at that point that you just said, if you came to us with like a final rough draft, then we would set you up with our editing team. We would finalize the developmental and proofreading for the book. Then we would take care of all the publishing for you. And then it would be up to you what type of marketing, like how big of a budget you have and how big you want to go. Then we would do the book launch to go for a specific bestseller list. Then after that, we would leverage that accolade to help you grow your audience through like PR and media hits. And then really the last step that we've started recently is actually taking like small percentages of the author's business if they want us to essentially become like their CMO, right? So it kind of goes beyond authorship at that point.
I like that. Thank you for explaining that. We actually have a question from my friend Huds. He's saying, how much do you charge for ghostwriting? I have too many quotes right now.
Oh, awesome. So it varies, but typically it's between 25K and 75K. It just depends on like how much work is needed, like how big the book's going to be, and things like that.
So 25K to 75K is that guaranteeing that your book will be completed by somebody, right?
Yeah, and it's guaranteed that like you and obviously the ghostwriter will 100% be happy at the end. So it's unlimited revisions, unlimited writing until you're 100% satisfied. And just to kind of explain the differentiation there, like 25K would kind of be like a shorter book, like maybe like 100 pages. And
Mm,
then the 75K is, more thicker, like 250 in that range.
got it. Got it. Thank you. Thanks for that question, Alex. If you have any more, Tyler's right here.
Yeah.
So, what is you said most of your clients are non-fictional writers, right?
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of because I saw a lot of the podcast guests that you have on, or they're kind of similar to us, like they're self-development type people.
Yeah.
Is that typically the clientele that you get that reach out to you?
So here's the thing, and this is actually something else to bring up. It's kind of cool. So I just came out with a course on this. It's called Infinite Partnership System, and it teaches how we grew our business. And most of the clients we get, they are business or personal development, like self-help authors. But the way we get them is actually from publishers. So myself, and now I have a full sales team that does it. We don't do like direct marketing to authors really at all, and if we do, it's like very minimal. Mostly what we do is use LinkedIn and Google, and we reach out directly to publishers, PR agencies, ghostwriters, and editors, because these are four types of people or businesses that work with a big pool of authors. So what we do is build a relationship with them and say, hey, look, we might be able to refer authors to you for PR, and you can refer them to us to hit these bestseller lists. And we've now established like thousands of these partnerships. And so that's the reason. And a lot of the publishers that we've partnered with are nonfiction publishers. So I think that's the main reason. And then the last thing I'd say, the reason is because to really make money from a book, and this is where you guys are headed, whether you were aware of it or not, I think you probably were aware of it,
Hmm.
is the back end, right? So it's like a fiction author. we can help, like I can get a fiction author, like a USA Today bestseller, and help them sell a lot of books. But without a back end, it's going to be a long time before they get a return on investment. Whereas for a nonfiction author, it's, we've had authors get an ROI in the same week. If their back end, like their sales funnel, if like Russell Brunson type stuff,
Yep.
because inside your book, you can have links and then people can opt in, right? And then if you're selling like a course or done for you that's in the thousands, you don't need that many readers to get an ROI from the experience. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Russell Brunson, by the way. I was recommended his stuff by a previous mentor of mine, and the one book that I read is what was it? It was the I know they're all like ClickFunnels type books, but
.com secrets or traffic secrets?
.com secrets.
Yeah, I think that's his first one. Yeah.
That book completely changed my I mean, I didn't even know anything about this stuff, and I didn't know that I was I was in the game of like, click funnels and sales funnels and all that stuff. I was just thinking like, oh, whatever, it's just a really good sales technique. But there's levels to this. There's layers and layers of the fact that he wrote like what, 3 books?
I think so. Yeah, at least 3, I believe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of the best marketers out there. So yeah, I can't recommend him enough. Yeah.
Did you take any notes when you read his material? Did you take any notes for your incorporating in your own business? Anything that kind of stood out for you? You're like, damn, I really, really got to like implement this in my own business.
So what I remember, and it's been a while since I've read it, but I also read .com Secrets. And if I remember correctly, there's something about the hero's journey in there.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest like things for me of like being able to storytell. And that's what marketing ultimately, it's storytelling, but and then the other part is traffic, right? Is like actually getting the eyeballs. And if you can have both of those things collide well, then your marketing will probably perform. So
absolutely. In fact, I always tell the guys in my stream, Tyler. So when I do like a stream on dating or I interview, let's say a dating coach or someone who's someone that's very familiar with like dating advice, I always talk about storytelling. And one of the things I talk about is that for a man to be more intimate with his woman without coming off very creepy and weird is to be able to storytell, because women are auditory people. They love to listen. They love to listen to a good story. And I think anyone loves to listen to a good story. I mean, this was in terms of dating, but when it comes to like just in general, if you look at all the TEDx conferences or TED Talks, the good speakers are the ones that know how to capture, engage, and captivate the audience with an amazing story. And the story doesn't have to be something where it was like, you went to war and you lost a limb, not not saying, thank you for everyone who's providing service to our country, but I'm just saying like it doesn't have to be something where it was like completely traumatic and now you become this brand new person. I mean, there are people out there, Tyler, that their voice deserve to be heard, and they have a voice to be shared, right? And I guess like one thing I want to ask you this is that you at a young age had the courage, and because here's the thing, writing a book can be very intimidating because you're thinking to yourself, what if nobody gives a about my story, right?
For sure.
So what was it about you that you were bold enough and courageous enough to say like, no, I'm going to write my book, and there are going to be people that will like it?
Honestly, man, I just felt like my back was against the wall. And I think it was an ego thing too at the time, because when I dropped out, like I come from a small town, like an hour north of Philadelphia. It's called Doylestown. So like pretty small town. And when I dropped out, like a lot of my friends, parents, friends and stuff, like they all thought that like I was going down it. Like they were just uncertain about my decision. Right. And I had this like determination. I was like, I'm going to prove to everybody that I made the right decision. Like I knew I could go back to college if I wanted, but just like I guess we'll just call it ego. Like my ego would have been so hurt. Like, and I thought about all these crazy thoughts of like, I didn't want to be in a classroom with people that were younger than me, all these things that really didn't matter, but like, I just didn't want to do them. So either way, I realized the reason I was able to write the book, I think that gave me the courage, just not wanting to fail publicly. And then also I thought I wanted to be a public speaker, right? So I had realized that like almost all public speakers that were getting like paid were authors, and better yet, they were best-selling authors. So in my mind, it almost kind of felt like a hack, honestly, to like get to the top of public speaking way quicker if I just started with a best-selling book rather than try to speak for, 10 years and then write the book later. So those were the two reasons I did it.
So we have Christian Soto saying Luke lost his hand during his hero's journey, and Ray got a scratch.
Yo, and
So go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say real quick, like the storytelling thing, it applies to everything, right? Like
Yeah.
books, and I think it's the reason. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Joe Rogan Show is the #1 podcast like in the world.
Mhm.
And dude, you're talking 3 hours of you don't even like the guest when you click play, but you have no clue what they're going to talk about. But what you do know is it's going to be an ever winding thing of like stories, and that's why people listen to him, right? It's the storytelling. They're not really listening to get a specific piece of knowledge. Although those work well too, right? Like very niche targeted, but his in particular, you're just there to be taken on a journey, like to just
Right.
listen to 3 hours worth of story. And I mean, dude, 3 hours of attention in today's world is crazy. And the only reason is from storytelling. So think about how powerful that is. I mean, so
And I think you're familiar with like how YouTube works as well. I mean, I'm just getting more comfortable with how YouTube works because I've been starting everything on IG Live, and now I'm moving to
yeah.
YouTube. But with YouTube, I watch time is extremely important to go from the beginning all the way to the end. If you could do that, and I mean, especially for a podcast, like 3 hours of someone watching from beginning to the end, that's huge on the algorithm.
Oh yeah, man. It's just nuts. Like, I mean, and there's other things, right? Just so that nobody feels like they're too late or something. Like Joe Rogan did get in at the right time as well. Like if he just started today, like would his show be as big? Probably not. But regardless, it just shows you that it is possible. Now it's just a little more competitive, obviously.
Absolutely. So I know that for interest of time, you also have things going on for you in a little bit, but I just want to ask you like, as a final question, and then we can do a plug for yourself, Tyler. The last question is for people who are just again, they're afraid of their sharing their story. They feel like their story is not strong enough. Is what would you say besides like that there's hope out there that you can do this? Like, is there anything else you can recommend to people that are just on the on the cusp of doing it, but they're just again hesitating? So what would you say to them to kind of motivate them, push them a little bit to get to sharing their story, that their stories are can be impactful and other people want
Yeah.
to listen to it?
I mean, to go back to the from the 4 hour work week, this is what did it for me. So this is really the biggest thing I feel I can share on it is like really sitting down. And if you feel like you want to write it down too, like really list out like all the bad things that you think are going to happen to you by sharing your story and like coming out and just being more open about stuff. Just list them and then give it an hour and like look at them, and you'll realize like most of them are just irrational. Like they're just not the case. And I forget the quote, but there's a quote of like we all think all people are like thinking about us. But like, dude, people are, I mean, maybe for a blimp, right? Like if you come out with something and you'll get some negative comments, but trust me, they're already on to the next TikTok post, like whatever. So it's just honestly, there's really nothing to worry about at the end of the day. It's all irrational. So
And the funny thing, absolutely true. You know why? Because my TikTok results have not been viral. So that just proves to me, that just proves right there exactly your point that there are people constantly just moving, looking for something entertaining. They don't see it's entertaining, they just go to the next one. So I'm
Mhm.
working on it, and I hope my TikToks eventually go viral. But Tyler, dude, I want to say thank you for coming on the interview. I know we did this a little bit shorter, but I appreciate you coming anyway. And is there a way that people can find you? I actually clicked on Authors Unite. It was taking me to a weird URL. So when I clicked on your
Oh,
Instagram,
really?
so yeah, like maybe that's just my phone, but we'll take a look at it. I'll talk to you like after the
Yeah, yeah. Let
stream.
me know. I might have to
But
talk to the tech team. That's scary.
yeah, where can people find you, Tyler?
So it's three ways for business stuff: authorsunite.com and infinitepartnershipsystem.com. And then Instagram is probably the best place to just connect directly. And that's Tyler B. Wagner is my Instagram.
Beautiful, beautiful. Guys, I want to say thank you for watching the stream. I really appreciate this. Is episode number 25, sharing your story with Tyler Wagner. Tyler Wagner is a very busy man. He's helping a lot of clients with marketing their books, and that's why we had to cut the episode up to the 30-minute mark. So, guys, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate you, Tyler. Again, it's an honor to see you again and to reconnect with you again, brother. Talk to everybody soon. Thank you for everybody being in the chat and asking questions and participating in the chat. You guys all have a great day.